The following is an interview with Noam Gerstein, the founder and CEO of the Bina School.
I am in Berlin today and I run the Bina School, which is an education technology startup that works on early years schooling.
They operate fully online and they offer an early stage curriculum that spans the entire world.
So we educate kids from 4 to 12 globally. So our school is transnational, meaning that we have kids from different places in the world studying together every day. We have tiny classes, all synchronous learning. So we have 6 kids in a class and phenomenal teachers.
We spoke to Noam about a lot of different points, including the Bina School, how it works, and why now was the right time to launch this company. We also talk about why it's an interesting problem to solve, what makes people good founders, as well as diving a little bit into the metaverse and that tangent, why it's good, why it's bad, what the lessons could be that have been learnt from the past. So quite a sprawling episode, but very, very interesting, especially when it comes to topics around diversity and transnationalism and kind of the difficulties that might present themselves in those areas.
We are working on something super interesting in what can be done in early years education.
This podcast is supported by Codesphere, as always. You can find out more about Codesphere on codesphere.com. You can listen to this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. We are on all the good platforms, so find your favourite and download it there. Enjoy the interview. I'll see you on the other side.
Is it all online or is it in person?
Right now, all their learning is digital.
And how many classes do you have concurrently? So it's like all
so we run 4 classes at the moment because we're very early on and we intentionally keep it very small to make sure that we do an excellent job. We have kids now from age 4 to 7 and we're growing with them. So we think we'll hit 12 in a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
Nice. And how do you put together a curriculum? Is it just like something that you've matched from one country particularly, or is it something you've put together specifically?
Yeah, so we spend quite a bit of time comparing the Anglosphere's standards. We landed on the UK standards as a base, and we kind of sprinkled it with the US Common Core. And then what we did is we broke it down to micro credentials of 3 types, where the first is knowledge, the second is skill, and the third is disposition. And disposition, which is social emotional learning, there's very little standards actually available. There are some, but they're not usually taught. Anyway, so we took the 3 of them. So let's say, and micro-credentials look approximately like this. So skill. I can count to 5 and back. Okay? Knowledge.
Congratulations.
And back, yeah.
I understand the life cycle of a sunflower. Okay, disposition. I exhibit empathy when my friend expresses loss of an object. Okay, so then we decide like where we need them to be by the end of school, by the end of the year, by the end of the term, by the end of the month, right? And we break it down. So we do backwards planning, it's called. So it's kind of like in business, but in curricula. Then we took 6 very big concepts. So what is time? What is space, right? And other questions like this. And we weave them in on a daily basis. And then every month and a half is a different unit. And units for us are all biomes because we seek something that is very large. And so we can look at different things. So for example, it looks like this. Okay. Let's say we're learning about forest and we're 5-year-olds today. Okay.
Yeah.
So we say, what is a forest and how do we define a forest and what is a definition? Okay. And where can we find forests? So let's look at a map. What is a map? What are the different types of maps? Can I map my house? Can I map my face? Can I map my space? Who lives in the forest? And then we work on phonics. So it's like the fox and the bunny, okay, and we jump around the house and we find everything that starts with the B, and we come back and we share it with our peers. And because our peers come from the very north to the very south of this time zone, we have very different buzz, and we talk about the differences in context, right? And then we say, okay, let's count the number of trees that were here, and let's count the number of trees that are here, and let's talk about the numerical difference between them, right? So subtraction. And then we talk about why are there less trees here now, and we talk about the environment. And then we talk about the different people groups that live near forests. So what are the stories that they tell? What are the differences and the similarities between the stories? Can we write our own story about a forest? How do we collaborate?
Okay, so a very different approach then to schooling, like very bespoke approach to education.
Yeah, so the aim is that we bound the different learnings into one concept, so it always lives in context.
And you had a career in education before you started the Bina School, before you founded it?
So I studied how schools work globally for 7 years. So I sat in schools all over the world for 7 years and interviewed students and parents and teachers and administrators to try and understand what works for them and what doesn't, and why that they think that may be, and whether we can perhaps try and think about, let's say, a system upgrade that can work transnationally.
Because that was going to be my question, I guess, like listening to you talking about it and kind of knowing the education system from friends who are teachers, especially in the UK. It seems like it's one of those industries that is like rife for the disruption because, you know, especially post-pandemic, there are so many things that are kind of like jarring or don't kind of work anymore from a certain point of view within education. But then kind of trying to renovate that internally or from the inside out must be, I don't know, almost impossible because of the, you know, the state kind of guidelines and the way that it's like probably a very slow moving ship. Was that kind of part of your thought process to found the company, or did you have experience trying to sort of disrupt from the inside out, or was it just kind of like we're always going to do an adjacent project and start something fresh?
I really think that when one tries to build or offer to society a new system, so not a new component, but actually a new system, it's very unlikely that it would come through iteration. Reason being, again, like we're talking about systemic design, and so when you try to take a building and use the foundations to build something completely different, it's like likely to not be a sustainable approach. So no, I think the way to go in terms of strategy is to build something that is so unbelievably compelling for a niche that it overtakes the mass.
And then it's kind of like, then it's appealing to the you know, the volume.
Exactly, that you cannot not do that because it just seems silly.
How was the founding process then? How did it go, like from a purely like as a founder? You know, how was that beginning journey for you?
And I mean, I love that you used past tense. That's very sweet.
How has it gone so far?
So here's the thing. So I mean, there are like different types of founders, and I think both types are, or all types could do amazing businesses, right? But as far as I'm concerned, like there are people that, you know, seek problems to solve, and there are people that are haunted by a problem. So I am on the second side. Like there is like a huge monster that's like chasing me, and I'm just like running as fast as I possibly can to defeat it. And so like my experiences are much more like mothering rather than like other stories that I hear. It's like I need to be a good stewardess, right? I need to make sure that I'm the dumbest person in the room. I need to think about like, how do I make sure that everybody grows, like the kids, the teachers, the staff, the business, and hopefully me as a result. But I've been it started not with a need, and I never wanted to be a founder again. It's just something that I've always done, and I don't know what else to do. But I think like I don't know. So it started with a curiosity. I'm kind of a very simple question, which is like, I've been looking at early years education institutions, and I must ask, like, yes, but why? Like, why is it done like that? So I was
How are you
just
doing
really
like
curious.
this?
And I went and I just asked a lot of people, why do you think this is the case? And so, and then I don't know, it's just, and I don't have a bro story whatsoever. It's not like I just started something and everybody loved it. It was like, it's not the thing at all. Like, I've been thinking about it for a very, very long time. And I didn't just start something. There's a lot of research and thought that went into it. And I'm still starting.
Yeah. But do you think that's what made you such, or makes you such a good founder? Then is just this your ability just to ask why, to look at the space, and like you say, you weren't. Were you the founder that is haunted by the big problem, or solving the problem? Right.
I'm like, I'm just like, it's not.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, there is something compelling about people that are both authentic and are serving a cause and not serving themselves. So to some extent, that could support components of the business, for example, like recruitment. I think is a bit easier on us because there's nobody in the team that wonders like, what is the purpose of this, right? It's obvious, it's so apparent and so mission driven, it's exhilarating. I don't think that I make it happen. I think it's just the thing. It's like, it is the monster. It's not me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially when you talk about the guys that are building something from scratch and they're like kind of building a product, especially with like technology in the forefront, there is a lot of like blind faith that people kind of presume that maybe staff and teams will have, but really like. That's something that we've spoken about a lot on this podcast, is this whole kind of like starting with the why and kind of like kind of beginning with the mission with something like what you're building and with the kind of the learnings that you've gathered before you've started. It's like it's almost like a no-brainer, and I think that's such a I don't know. It's almost like a kind of a rarity at the moment with the kind of the way that this kind of like startup culture is at the moment. It's like you kind of build a product because you can, almost. That's sometimes how it feels. A lot of the kind of companies that are out there, it's like, is there a real reason for you doing this, or is it just because you can get some money to do it? So it definitely feels like an alternative story, which is kind of strange because it's like you're actually solving a problem, and that's what a company should be, really.
I mean, I actually think that there's a moral problem with doing that. I think that very little people can, and it requires immense privilege of various sorts, from like enough charisma to make things happen in the world to like usually enough education and almost always very fierce financial background. And so, if you open a company for the sake of opening a company, you're a douche.
Yeah.
You have real problems. They are severe.
Yeah.
Privilege comes with responsibility. It is unacceptable.
Yeah, no, I think we were talking about this a while ago as well. It's this whole kind of like, just because you can throw money at a problem and just kind of like cover all bases, like this whole, not so much in the startup culture at the moment, but in kind of bigger companies, this kind of like betting on the next stages of what the metaverse might be, or driverless cars, or what does these things that Amazon and Facebook are gambling on, but they're not solving any issues. It's like nobody needs like another like Google Glasses kind of spin-off, or like nobody needs something like that. But it just seems to be that there's like a because you can throw money at a problem, you should. And I think it's a very interesting kind of like, as you say, it's quite a moral dilemma. It's not really spoken about because growth seems to be the key of like any of this stuff, which is maybe the wrong thing.
I mean, there's really interesting financial work being done in terms of thought leadership by some actually female economists right now. It's like growth is not endless and it's not without a price. And so we have to decide like what are the prices that we're willing to pay and what does that mean. And I think we are all paying it right now. Everybody's like, oh my God, the market's crashing. It's like, yeah. For sure.
Yeah. What did you expect?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw an interesting thing this morning. Gorillas in Berlin, the fast delivery service here.
Slower than you should be their next.
It's like, sorry, we're slower than you.
They're laying off half of its staff in the Berlin HQ now in order to increase their runway. And Klarna, Klarna, the buy now, pay later platform, they're also getting rid of 10% of all of their staff as well.
Why don't you start with a good concept? It'll help.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like this race to the bottom culture, I think, which is it's like I don't know what people expected, and I think from people working in other industries that are kind of central to community as well, like for example schools and for example coffee shops and places like that, which like build up around small communities. People just think that there's like an easier option, so they won't become a teacher, they won't become like a coffee expert or whatever, because you can just sit on a bike and do like a delivery thing for the same amount of money, if not more in some cases. Like it's very skewing, I think, and people don't seem to see the sort of like the downside of it. I don't know. It's a very interesting discussion, especially with the kind of background of the pandemic, where like all bets were off a little bit. It's just like, well, we're living through this, so like just do whatever you can to get through it. But now I feel that there's a huge deficit of like, okay, well, what parts of this do we need to keep? What parts of this do we like kind of just trim off? I don't really know why like 10-minute delivery was ever something that needs to sort of continue for forever. But yeah, it's a really it's like fascinating problems, as you say. It's like it seems like it's like a no-brainer that things are kind of are playing out the way that they are.
I mean, I think it's a combination of two different things, and one is the just insane valuations that companies got, which are not related to the type of business they managed to produce, and so then they have to chase their own tails. There are great examples of this in education as well, where people have had ideas that have real problems in scale, just in the concept of scale. But they were so talented in fundraising that they raised so much money. They had to grow without having laid the proper grounds to do such a thing, or have thought deeper into like how human resources should be and could be managed within the process. That's one. The second is that we live in a society that prefers power over care, and I really hope that both obviously like that's kind of what we're working on. Like, how do we make being a teacher like the best job on the planet? But also, I really hope that the next generation of people that craft realities are people that think about this very, very differently.
Well, how do you define a problem that's worthwhile to solve? Like, what are your like advice out there for anyone out there who maybe isn't a founder yet or isn't sure whether or not their problem has legs? Are there any kind of goals, or at least in your experience, kind of benchmarks for things that a problem?
If you're not sure if the problem has legs, it doesn't.
It's easy as that.
It's a good sentence. Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. And don't just do something, stand there. We don't have endless air in the world. Like, if you're not significantly improving a life, don't do it.
I mean, it's funny when you say it out loud because it's very straightforward, but that's definitely not the that's not the sort of starting point for a lot of
Just
people.
don't do it. Like, we have
Yeah,
real
yeah.
problems. Like, people are uneducated, people are hungry, people are sick. Like, uh, they're real problems. Like, serious ones. I mean, we can start there. Like, our planet is dying. Like, stuff, you know? If you're not
Yeah.
sure that it's a real problem, it's not.
But how do you? I mean, so take the Bina School for example. Did you start with like how did you finance it? How did you get to the point where you could start solving these problems? What was the kind of like process for you? Because obviously, I see the passion and like, okay, we're gonna solve this problem, but then that's like the first thought step. It's like from the vision to the actual impact of doing the thing. How did you make that happen? How did you kind of
I'm
like
still
take those
making it
steps?
happen. It's difficult.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
The thing is that just like there are a bunch of people that seek small problems that can make money quick, it is also the funding climate.
Yeah.
The vast majority of it. Although, I mean, I think it has been pretty clearly proven that when we solve real big problems, then we make also real big money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way kind of the VC asset class is crafted is not 10x 10. It's not 10x. It's actually 3-ish x thing quickly.
How do you mean? Can you explain that? Explain that in a bit more detail. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, like, as an asset class, what they need to show, like, what is their, like, the vast majority of VC business models is not made to look for risk, actually, although this is their job.
Okay.
They like, it is about de-risking, and they don't look for the huge gains that take a bit longer, but they look for the small gains that don't take a lot of time because they need to maintain themselves, which is
Yeah.
fine. Like, as an asset class, that makes sense, but for us, it means that we look for very specific types of funders. We were super, and I mean, when I started shopping this around, I asked if people are interested in funding this, and what I usually heard was, you're crazy. You're going to need like endless pockets behind you. And so I said, okay, so who has that?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're backed by a phenomenal kind of really interesting organization called Mistletoe, which is sort of like it's from the SoftBank dynasty,
Okay.
and they do impact. They have a very clear vision of what the future looks like, and basically fund everybody that works around that, and join just some VCs that do only education, some individuals that are very strong in their own respective markets and believe in this as a necessity, and also as a potential very big financial gain as well.
Okay. And this is a very specific question to your company, but how? So let me take a different angle. So, for example, if you're going to say use a piece of software, right, as an adult, and you're like, this is my company, I've built this thing. You test the product, you don't like it, you think, okay, that's it, I'll drop it, or you carry on using it. And maybe there's a freemium model where you use it for free for a bit, and you think, you know what, I really like this thing, I'm going to start paying for it because now they've added a pricing tier. Mm-hmm. Is that way harder with the kind of like an online primary school for children because you're kind of flipping the model on its head so much from a person, say, for example, a parent who's learnt in a school in person? It's a very like traditional method of like, okay, we're going to educate our child in this way. And then is the convincing difficult? And what does that look like? And then how do you kind of like introduce like how do you introduce the payment process to that?
Yeah. So we are built. So there are two ways to answer this question, and one is like why would anybody go for this, right?
Yeah. That's like the unpolite version of my question.
Yeah, but let's say things like they are, because it makes the conversation interesting.
Yeah.
So we find that we're very, very attractive to basically 4 types of families. One is families that we call them multicultis. They are dealing with several cultures and usually several languages within their household. They are more likely to move around. They seek stability for their kids, and they seek language, like a cultural home for their children, where everybody's like them a little bit. So those 2 things we can provide it tremendously well. Another type are people that live, let's call it educational deserts, right? Where there's a mismatch between their values and what's offered around them. And that has different types of hats, right? Like maybe they don't educate girls in that region. Maybe there are only Christian schools around them and they're just not into that. Maybe they live on a boat. Okay, and it's just not available to them, right? So just people that the offering in their local offering is not a good fit for them.
Okay.
There are what we call special cases. So if it's dangerous out there, which we have quite a bit of students, we have for example, we have one African child that lives in a very, very dangerous surrounding. It's very dangerous for him to go to school. If they have health issues. So, for example, like we have an amazing student that has a heart disease, but she still goes to school every day and meets her peers every day, right? There are quite a bit of neurodiverse situations that we can deal with pretty well. Not all of them yet. We're getting there, but and some of them we will never be able to. But definitely, like the very high functioning spectrum ADHD, we do basically well with these kids. So there are some cases like this. So those are special cases, and the last are, let's call them educational pioneers, where they're like, this is just much better education by far, right? People that understand that for the younger ages, like small groups are key, and you don't get 6 kids in a class anywhere else, right? People that understand that if you can do assessment in a continuous manner and not in a periodic manner, like just you can, the feedback loops are super quick, and that's kind of the only thing that we can actually do for students, right? People that find that the level or the quality of educators is the most important thing for them. And a lot of people that are really interested in this multicultural or transnational being for their kids, where they interact with kids from different places in the world every day. So those are the last kind of group. If I go to a family that's very traditional right now and come and say like, hey, do you want this? A lot of them would say no, and that's fine. These 4 groups are not, it's not a particularly hard sell, because they have been looking for us and they feel like we're saving them. And we're honored and we serve, so that's now. And thing is that with them and for them, we're building a system that's SaaS. So we call it's a school as a service, right? It means that every big entity can open a school like this, and it offers precision education. And precision education is so just like in medicine, where we're now moving from mass producing pills in single dosage to crafting precision med. We do the same thing for early years education, both for the students as well as for the educators, which is a big, big issue in early years education. And what we get with it is a balance between extreme personalization to extreme standardization, which is what we are seeing in the types of education that are offered now, given, let's say, the resources that these systems are built on. So you'll see like either in the extreme personalization, you'll see cases with a child that's growing a mustache but can't read the ice cream flavors because their heart isn't meant to learn how to read. And on the other hand, you see like kids that are overworked and completely lacking the why. Nobody knows why they're learning this or why this happened, why this is happening to the entire body of like the students, the parents, the teachers, right, and even kind of policymakers. So and we get to precision education because the thing is that if we look at the way education systems were crafted until now, they are pretty, like, systemically speaking, they're relatively similar throughout the world. And reason being that, I mean, it was a single design that was multiplied or copied. And it delivered like one of the most amazing revolutions that history ever offered, which is literacy revolution, right? Like most adults reading right today. It's like, this is mind-bogglingly great. That through kind of prioritizing quantity over quality, right?
Okay.
And so when we design educational experiences, we kind of aim to hit the center of the bell curve and think about like a relatively flat bell curve, because kids are grouped by their location, so they vary quite much, right? So like by design, like half of them are under challenged and the other half are kind of overstretched. Okay. And this is best case scenario. Mostly like we land at the lowest common denominator, which is really bad for society.
Because you're just trying to get through as many people as you can.
Yeah.
So
what we can do, because we live in this amazing era that for the first time, quantity can actually support quality. Like the more data we have, the more accurate we can become for each individual, like, is phenomenal. And so this SaaS, or the school as a service, is meant to eventually collaborate with corporates, NGOs, and governments. And so we can offer this type of education, this type of quality for all. We will forever continue running the private school because it's amazing. But we won't grow it exponentially. The aim is to really get to the masses.
I guess from one of the pieces that I've pulled out of what you've just said, and something that we've talked a lot about on the podcast so far, is this whole thing of timing as well. And like, do you think that now is the time that you can actually do this, because technology has got to a certain point where it gives you the ability to do it? The internet is fast enough; you can gather this data in a very quick, succinct way and actually deploy it. And do you think you could have done it before?
No, and absolutely now. Three main reasons. One is not asynchronous learning for younger ages is not a good idea. We need synchronous learning for younger ages. It's an absolute must. And to get to that, video needed to get to where it is right now. So you can even see it like when there are little breaks, because what happens is an illusion of togetherness, right? So like when it breaks for little humans, it's like, oh, we're not really together.
Yeah, of course.
And so we really need stable. We really need stability in terms of the video, and that's pretty new. Second thing is 5G, which... So
it's really quite recent. Technology's really recently caught up to the point to make this really...
I remember just before pandemic, I was walking around and they were like, really? You're going to put a class on Skype? I just spoke to my nana. It broke 7 times. You're never going to be able to do that with a 5-year-old. I'm like,
who are you talking
just give me a minute.
I was pitching it exclusively in New Jersey.
Scarecrows, yeah.
So just give me a minute. But yes, I mean, I think that's really key. And I think other things like, where deep learning is could make it just...
What about the future of like education in the metaverse? Does this excite you? Is this something that seems like a viable future?
Yeah. So... here's what's cool about it. And the rest is not cool. So what's cool about it is that with these type of experiences, we can reach educational experiences that we cannot do in any other form. For example, we can do the incredibly dangerous, okay? Like, go to the burning building and save the girl, okay? We can do the incredibly expensive, right? Like, fly a plane.
yeah. Right.
We can do empathy things, right? Like, here's how it feels like to walk around in the world being a Black lady. This is how people look at you. Okay.
Right. Sure.
So we can do kind of the impossible, the expensive, the dangerous, and those are educational experiences that I find are very valuable. And I think metaverse could be interesting for that. However,
how big capitals are those? However, that's like a.
I mean, I think that's right. It's not the main event. Like, these are nice embellishes to like kids looking at other kids' faces. For us, like doing things in a collaborative era, and to be honest, like, do we need to do a math game in the metaverse, or can we just play an awesome math game?
Yeah, exactly. How much value does it really bring?
So it brings value when you actually need to provide experiences that are unavailable in any other form.
It's interesting. I know exactly what you mean, because I was researching something. I think it was a while ago when headsets became quite accessible. There was an exhibition in London where they just basically filmed in 360 environment a refugee camp and let people just experience it. And they also added to it the smells of like what it would be like to be in that environment. And it was too much. They had to close it. They were like, people were breaking down so often. They were just like, it was completely overwhelming. But it shows you that as a tool, it's so powerful to actually transport and educate. But then you get on this other side, this watered down experience of like, you can now sit around a conference table in the metaverse. It's like, it's a waste of time.
I don't even want to do it not in the metaverse, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I remember, I'm sure you both have listened to it as well, that Mark Zuckerberg interview with Lex Fridman. And it's just like, it's depressing hearing him talk about his vision, because the tool is so powerful, but it's like dead on arrival. It's just, I feel like it's kind of like sadly like a waste of time and resources, because what you could enable isn't just a marketing tool and something you can slap like adverts and stuff when you're walking around. It's like actually being able to educate and show people what the world is really like. But it seems to be not what it's really like. It's as far away from it as possible. It's like, it's really sad. But
I mean, generally, like attempts to copy like physical reality into virtual space is kind of meh.
Yeah.
But aren't you taking the example here, like Tim, if you like, imagine he's introducing to us like DVDs and you're saying, oh, that one's a bit like Star Wars, so it's nothing to do with reality. It's like, just because his presentation of this version of what that version of the metaverse would be is not representative of the limitation of the entire concept.
No,
that is a limitation, but it's more the fact that it's like, as we were saying before, it's like who's making the loudest noise and solving whatever they think of the problem might be.
But once the tech is there, couldn't someone then come along and make like just open up the space for people to use it in really good ways? They're just not using it yet because it's only in the hands of in this case, Zuckerberg, right?
I mean, we tend to blame medium and instead of usage. So it's like, screens are bad for people. It's like, are they? Like,
if you stare at them.
What we do with them, right? It's horrible for kids if they're passively staring at something. It's pretty awesome if they're talking to a biology professor, if that's their thing, It's like, So, I mean, I do think that we need to separate kind of content from medium, and as a medium, it has a potential to bring some gems. Nonetheless, like the content is pretty.
Do we have content yet that we are like? Is it? That's what I'm saying. Like, are we just judging this whole next step of tech very, very quickly before it's even got out the gate? You know?
I told you, I'm super excited. If I can have like if we can like run through like 200 years of forest, kind of.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
that would be cool. Yeah,
or like, there are a bunch of things we can do. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
Do you remember that old TV show Walking with Dinosaurs? Tim, do you remember that? I'd love to have, awesome. Love to be, if I was a kid and that was a tangible thing to be inside.
Do you know what that is? You know that the concept of that? It was like a BBC David Attenborough level natural history program, and they CGI'd dinosaurs.
It was in the early 2000s as well, so the CGI was bad, but it was like they treated it like it was a real natural history, like a documentary, but it was as if they were really there. And I was fascinated as a kid. I was really involved, and I created stories out of these dinosaurs. And then, like, when the dinosaur eventually dies at the end of the episode, that's the fossil that they found in reality. It stuck with me now, so it must have done something right.
Yeah. I remember there was real uproar as well, because there was one where they were filming on a beach, and they'd accidentally left a flip-flop, like a little sandal on the beach, and there was loads of people being like, "This is terrible. People love this show and they've ruined it."
A flip-flop on the beach.
Could have been a dinosaur.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah. I'm really kind of excited about this next metaverse step, because I feel like people are. I don't know. I think people are way more aware of it now, like after kind of like people jumping headfirst into like social media, and now the effects are only really felt sort of, I don't know, 15 years later, or like what's happened, and like what it's caused. And, like obviously there's massive positives, and like actually being able to bring people together and kind of glue together communities that are completely separated physically. But then this whole kind of like issue of attention and like, sponsored content and like the way that like this sort of secret advertising and stuff and tracking. It's just interesting to sort of note, to sort of like, are we more aware of that now? And will the next step be more informed? Because we've had this like last chunk of time of learning, but that's I guess that's why it's kind of exciting, because nobody really knows.
We can take a wild guess.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next for the Bina School? What's next for you before we close up for today?
Oh my God, a lot. So we are running classes in Central Europe, like we call it Euro Africa. So like from the very north to the very south. And now we're opening classes we have a first class in Eastern time. So from the very north to the very south. And we're going to grow that. We are slowly opening more spots for very fitting families. So that's kind of cool. And finishing the entirety of the curriculum, which is super exciting. Collaborating with as many education tech as possible to incorporate them within what we do. So that's also exciting. We're getting accreditation, which is super nice. So in the process, we have another round in the fall. So that's something to get ready for.
Another fundraising round?
Yep. And I'm just like building
just
it.
Keep going.
Just building the thing.
One question of you saying about opening different time zones and kind of like it being very kind of spread out internationally. Do you find like building community around the company, is that a challenge, or is it like actually raising awareness and kind of like and growing the people that might be interested? Is that something that you find difficult, or is it kind of quite organic?
Well, I guess the answer is yes. Like both, right? Because yes, it's difficult. It needs to be crafted and it needs to be very well thought out. But I do think that like the again, like we attract a very specific type of people, and in fact they behave very similarly. They kind of have their own culture that is that is kind of this that is more similar to each other than their place of origin, so to say.
Okay.
So there's kind of a bunch of behaviors that we can see in all of them that makes kind of gluing this community together a bit easier than one would expect.
It's like sort of like I don't know what the word is. It's like kind of like an undercover audience almost, like, because there are people out there, but like reaching them must be, because it's such a specific use case. Like you're saying, like one of the people that you listed is like people who live on boats. You know, it's like how do you, how do you actually
I know
reach
you're
those
being
people?
very specific, but I know who you mean. Like when you say that, people
exactly,
with very nomadic family lifestyles. You know,
it's like the multiculties. They do the same things.
How do you reach them? How do you find those people? Like, I guess it's just adverts at airports.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only airports, right? Like a lot of people choose this lifestyle. So right now, for example, there are a bunch of people that have moved with Corona to the countryside, and everybody's like, I'm like, I don't want to go back, but school, right?
Yeah.
So several things. One is like they tend to have their own communities, and these things populate. Right, like boat people have like boat friends. Right? People that just moved to a village, although they're like, it's a new thing for their lifestyle, tend to be connected to others. Like homeschoolers tend to be connected to other homeschoolers. People that live nomadically tend to be connected to others, and so like there are a lot of
that's true.
This is a big thing for us, obviously, and as it should be.
So it's about finding these shared watering holes and then reaching one and allowing them the ecosystem. Find the super parent.
Yeah, because the thing is that like it almost always there's just like one parent that makes the decision for everybody else.
Right. I wonder if that relates to any of our other founders listening out there. Like if you find one, one member,
super user.
Yeah, super user who will just convince others to use your platform.
Find the super parent.